Oh hi, I'm Mark Levitt, and welcome once again to the second part of my story time featuring the nuzzling buzzle. The next morning, Miss Nosepickle gave Bolus and Buzzle a bath in a long tin bowl. She wiped both of the mischievous customers with a long white washcloth that tickled their ears. Bolus splashed around in the water. The Buzzle kept trying to lick the suds. All at once, the door opened, though, and the bathroom burst open. There stood Mr. Pouch carrying a notepad and pencil, along with 6 other men with long black cameras. "Good day, Mrs. Nosepickle," said Mr. Pouch. "Mind if we get a few pictures with the nuzzling buzzle for the paper?" Mrs. Nosepickle stood up tall and waving her dish towel in the air. She proclaimed, "Mr. Pouch, you ain't touching one hair on that buzzle's head. One hair, mind you. Now be reasonable here, Miss Nosepickle. It's wrong not to share." The photographers crept closer to the bowl, and soon the buzzle began to emit a strong squealing sound, an sound to the bowl, and Mr. Pouch and the photographers had to hold their ears. Well, Mrs. Nosepickle dug her head into the dish towel, and little Bolus hit his ears against the tin bowl. Next thing you knew, the nuzzling buzzle darted its googly eyes back and forth and leapt out of the bowl onto Mr. Pouch's face. "Ack," he thundered. "Get this thing off me!" At that exact moment, though, the photographers pointed their cameras and shot the unfortunate Mr. Pouch, his face covered from head to foot in full-grown buzzle. Well, to Mr. Pouch's chagrin, the paper refused his photographs of the buzzle. Instead, a sleazy tabloid ran the photos of the luckless Mr. Pouch along with the caption, "Fur-faced man walks the earth." Poor Mr. Pouch. He had to soak his face the whole livelong day in a big tub of Epsom salts. He might have soaked his sore face the whole night, too, had it not been for the appearance of a small little critter. As Pouch sat in the bathroom and soaked, the buzzle jumped up and snuck through a small opening in the window. The buzzle carried a tray of honey, biscuits, and sassafras tea from the tippy top of its fuzzy little head. When he caught sight of the buzzle, Mr. Pouch jumped back and howled. After a few moments, Mr. Pouch grew angry and began to chase the buzzle around the floor with a broom handle. The biscuits and tea fell against the floor with a mighty crash. The buzzle jumped up and landed in Mr. Punch's bowl of shaving cream. After much scuffling, the buzzle, still dripping in froth of shaving goo, found itself cornered against the wall. Mr. Pouch was about to strike the creature when suddenly it drooped its head and started to emit a sad noise. Mr. Pouch stood and stared down at the cornered buzzle. He raised the broom handle high above the creature, but then, wouldn't you know it, the angry stone-faced Mr. Buzzle, assistant to the editor-in-chief of the Bedford Burdock, softly laid down his broom and wiped a single tear from his cheek. Well, a few minutes later, Mrs. Pouch, was passing by the bathroom and thought she heard a conversation through the door. She pushed the door open, and with some effort, and what she saw almost knocked the eyes out of her head. There, the nuzzling buzzle sat on a toilet seat, while the sound of Mr. Pouch's voice rang out strong and clear from behind an open book of fairy tales. Mrs. Pouch put her hand on her waist, stamped her foot, and declared, "Josiah P. Pouch, are you reading a bedtime story to that thing?" Later that evening, the Nose Pickles opened their front door to grinning Mr. and Mrs. Pouch, holding a covered laundry basket. "We think we have something of yours, Mr. Nose Pickle," said Mr. Pouch. Mr. Nose Pickle came over to examine the basket and its contents while puffing on his pipe. "Well, if it ain't the little feller," cried Mrs. Nose Pickle, with the most emotion he had ever expressed in his whole life. Then Mrs. Nose Pickle came running out of the kitchen. When she saw the fluffy creature popping its head out of the bucket, she said, "You gave us quite a little scare, little one." Suddenly, a small tiny voice came from out of the crib in the other room. "Nuzzling buzzle," it proudly announced. The Nose Pickle stood back aghast at their son Bolus's first words ever. A joyous nuzzling buzzle ran to follow the tiny voice that came from the other room. Well, I hope you enjoyed the story. I've been your host, Mark Levitt. Thank you for watching Story Time, Story of the Nuzzling Buzzle. Y'all have a good day.